All right, looks like we are live. Let me just go close the door real quick. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another camera class. My name is Saxon, your host. Today is a Monday, actually, funny enough. But today is camera class day because I will be out of town this upcoming Thursday. So instead we decided to run it today. Today is going to be the technical first class of the month. So it is our intro to cameras. Pull this up. There we go. Okay, so camera basics, intro to cameras. We're going to start off with the very beginning. For anybody who was here last month, you may have seen some of these classes but didn't join. This is the very first class. So what are we really talking about in our intro to cameras? First and foremost, before I continue, if anybody online has any questions, there is a chat feature available to you. Keep the questions appropriate. Ask whatever questions you have. I'll answer them live so that way we can get you an answer. And again, we normally run this on Thursdays from 5:30 to 7. It is today at 5:30 to 7 just because I will be out of town this Thursday. But starting next week, that will be the April, let me tell it down for you. April 10th, we will be running this just like normal. So, what we're really talking about today, camera basics, is we want to get started. We want to learn how to use a camera or maybe what to look at when buying a camera so that way we understand a little bit more what goes into this whole thing. What we're trying to do is graduate from a smartphone. We're not trying to learn manual controls. We're not trying to get this really in-depth and detailed understanding of it as a tool. Rather, we're just trying to make sure we understand the bare minimum, because if we can understand that, we can practice, we can move forward, we can do everything in our power to then get better at photography as a whole. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, for the starting point that I like to make, where to go when all else fails. There are a lot of tools, there's a lot of resources out there, everybody. It's important that you take advantage of all those things. I am one source here. Apple Electronics and my small electronics department is a really wonderful trained staff full of experts who are always willing to help you with whatever camera knowledge, whatever else you need. However, it's important to understand that there are a few different resources out there that you should take advantage of. The owner's manual, for example. Take a look at the owner's manual, read through it, get a better understanding of it. It's there for a reason. It'll show you buttons, the layout, what things are where, what they do. When all else fails, you can always revert back to that. It'll have all the information you should need. Imaging Resource, and they have a podcast, that's the symbol below, are also great resources. They're out there to really help you understand what sources or what materials, and people are very knowledgeable on that site. It's a blog style posting, so people will post questions, and usually within an hour or so you'll get answers and other feedback that might be beneficial to you. The Canon, Nikon, and Sony website, the big three in our camera world, are very knowledgeable as well too. Nikon actually has one of my favorite websites that are around. They have so much information and things that you can learn from. They're a great resource, but all three have specifics on the cameras that you're buying or looking at, how to use and what functionality they have. And lastly, YouTube. It's one of my favorites. That's what we're streaming on right now, but YouTube is a wealth of knowledge for those getting into the camera world. It'll give you tips, tricks, how to set up, maybe settings or other questions that you might have as you're progressing forward in this journey. Before we jump into more of the buttons, the layouts, lenses, all the things I think that are important for you to know as a photographer, let's talk about the big three in the camera world. The types of cameras that are out there currently are the DSLR, the mirrorless, and the point and shoot, or the bridge camera as it's referred to as well. The main two that we'll be talking about today, and if anyone has questions on the bridge or point and shoot, I'm more than happy to help. And this class will still talk about buttons and features that are available on there. But the two main cameras are mirrorless and DSLR. A DSLR is a digital single lens reflex, and a mirrorless is the same technology but minus the mirror. Where it's a benefit. The mirrorless cameras are lighter weight and they're smaller, more compact. On top of that though, the technology nowadays offer for the mirrorless cameras to be a stronger, better, and faster camera overall. They give the user a lot of flexibility when it comes to taking photo and video. It performs well in low light situations and really delivers an amazing feeling to the user, something that really should be helpful and overall beneficial to you as a photographer, as someone who is getting off the ground and really understanding what to do. But mirrorless is the new technology, and for the most part, that's what you're going to see. Now, however, if you get a hand-me-down DSLR, or they're running a special on a DSLR at our store or any other camera store in the country, you will find that it's still a great camera. It's just the older technology that is slowly but surely becoming more and more less supported by the big brands. Now, before we get into buttons, we want to talk about memory cards. Now, SD cards are extremely important to these cameras. Without an SD card, we are unable to save any photo. No camera you buy on the market today will come with a memory card. Some might be bundled together depending on where you're buying your stuff from, but for the most part you will buy a memory card separately. Where the questions really come in and lie with that is the fact that memory cards are necessary. You cannot take photos with your camera without memory cards. Memory cards will fit into the camera in either one or two slots, and there are different types, so make sure you really look specifically to see which camera you have, what memory cards are available, just information that is beneficial to you, the user, so that way you're getting the proper card for your camera. I would recommend not getting anything less than 64 gigabytes, just to ensure that you have proper storage on the device. Especially if you're going on a big trip or out of the country or anything crazy, you want to make sure you have plenty of storage on your camera, as to make sure that you don't accidentally run out of storage and then not have any place to save your images or videos. And I always recommend having two cards at all times. This ensures that if one card fails, you have another one as a backup. I recommend the same thing with camera batteries. And now I'm jumping a little ahead, but I would say the same thing. Memory cards and batteries, it's never a bad idea to have two, just in case you don't charge one battery or one dies quicker than the other. And with the memory cards, if one doesn't work or you run out of storage, at least now you have backup. Now your picture should never live on your memory card. The way I think about a memory card is that it's a vehicle. It takes you from point A to point B. Much like a car would take you from home to work, the memory card is taking you from the camera to the computer. My steps for making sure you don't lose or damage or ruin your transfer when it comes to these SD cards. 1, turn your camera off. That should be the first step. Should wait about 5 seconds after doing that. Remove the card and place it into a card reader. Try to avoid using your camera to transfer photos to your device. It's a very common practice. They make apps on the phone now where you can download images. It's totally acceptable. They also have it where when you plug a camera into the computer, you can download the images via that as well too. While all of that is a great option and is still something that you can use and do, I would recommend still taking the SD card physically out of the camera and plugging it into the computer to avoid the chance of damaging your camera, damaging your computer, losing photos in the part of transfer because the wire becomes disconnected, and any other sort of kind of funky off-the-wall things that could happen. Again, is it likely? Not necessarily, but anything can happen, and it'd be a shame if you did all this work to then have nothing to show for it. So invest in a good card reader. Use one. They're recommended. They're relatively inexpensive. You can buy high-end card readers depending on your setup and depending on your needs. However, you can also get away with a $10 to $15 card reader. I like the Trifecta one because it works in both USB-A and USB-C, the modern connections that we all see today. We then want to copy the photos to a destination folder. Don't move them, but copy them. Use Explorer for Windows or Finder for Mac. And then copy and not move those photos to a secondary location. That could be an external drive, Prime Photos, Google Drive. You want to make sure that you have your photos saved on not only your computer or your desktop, but also another location just in case something were to happen. If you lose your laptop, it gets stolen, you break something on there, you spill water, you're no longer able to access files because you accidentally deleted something. You want to always confirm that you have a backup to that. You should also be labeling your destination folders. Think of a fun name for it. Personally, if I were to be shooting, I would take the event plus the date and make that the title of the folder. Something easy so I could find it. If I was taking photos at my friend's wedding, I might label it Sally and Todd's wedding, March 31st, 2025. Now when I go back and I'm looking for those photos, even if I don't have them in a spot that I can find and recognize, I can easily type that in and get the results through my computer's search engine. Again, you want to store the photos and have a way to find and retrieve them, not store them and lose them. After that, you can eject the card before physically removing it. I would recommend formatting the card in the camera next. Formatting will erase old info on the card. It'll also prime the card so that way when you go to take photos, those photos will save in a nice and organized fashion, but it also will optimize the storage. That could be a big difference of a few extra video or photo files, especially if you're shooting in RAW or a higher end format. You can also still delete them while they're on the computer too, but I would recommend formatting the card instead to save yourself the time and the hassle. Here is your backup plan. Here is the kind of course of events, but I use images to really explain it rather than just words. You start with the SD card. The SD card has all your images saved onto the unit. From there, then it's recommended you insert that through a card reader into the computer. Once in the computer, you can then copy them over to a hard drive or to a cloud-based solution to save your images and files. Try a cloud-based solution. They're relatively free. Some of them will require more if you have extra storage or need extra storage on there. But again, typically it's nice because you can access them anywhere. Now, I say this because it's an easy way of getting around needing to have hard drives and extra materials. I personally am more of a hard drive man myself, so I use hard drives when I'm saving my images and my files. Now, getting into it a little bit more, let's go through a tour of your camera. This is where I like to break down and really explain the nitty-gritty parts of taking a photo. Sorry, not taking a photo, but I like to break down all the parts of your camera so that you understand where things are located. This is not necessarily going to be universally the same camera on everyone has. However, your camera has this button located somewhere within the unit. So if you don't see it right off the bat where I'm telling you it's at, it might be in a different location, and that's totally fine. You might just have to look around and take a look for it. Start off with the top of the camera. There should be a red dot or a red circle located somewhere on the top of your camera, if not on the sides. That symbolizes the video start and stop. One click will start the video, the second click will stop the video. The next thing is there's a power switch. Flicking the power switch one way will turn the camera on, the other way will turn the camera off. We also have the shutter release. Clicking this will take the physical photo. A half squeeze on the shutter release, or the trigger as it's also known as, will focus the photo and get ready to take the physical image. Exposure compensation exists to help you change the overall exposure of your photo. Now, I'm going to be telling you towards the end of this tour of your device to stay on the automatic settings of your camera for now as you start to learn the device and become more comfortable. However, you can always switch to a manual control when you feel comfortable. When doing so, you will have access to things like exposure compensation. But exposure compensation will take the overall image color, or overall darkness or lightness of an image, and brighten it or darken it depending on your preference. The mode dial is like your gear shift on a car. Using the mode dial will help you switch between manual control, aperture, shutter priority, program auto. On this camera we also have scene, we have effects, we have no flash. There are tons of different options that you'll see on cameras. So don't be afraid to try those out. However, I still will recommend using the automatic feature on there and sticking with that for now as you become more comfortable and learn the camera. Now on this camera we have a live view switch. Most live view switches have been taken off of cameras, and now we have a display button. On some Nikon models you will see an LV, and it's remnant of the old live view switch days. Switching that will change the display from either the viewfinder to the camera body. It can also change how the viewfinder or the display looks when you hold the camera up to your eye. And then lastly, you have the command dial. Command dial is pretty universal in a lot of different ways. The command dial will control whatever it is of the functionality or feature you're using. In automatic, it probably won't do anything for you. However, in things like aperture or shutter, it will control the aperture or the shutter of the camera as you rotate and change and file through the different numbers. Again, I think it's very important that as a beginning photographer, as someone who's just getting started, you really stay on the automatic settings for now. Reason being is that you want to make sure that the camera is functioning to its full capabilities. You want to make sure you understand what the camera is doing. And it's very difficult to do that when you're in manual control and you're not 100% on how this all works. I would strongly recommend sticking on the automatic until you have a better grasp of what the camera is doing to take your image. then I would start to explore. More times than not, customers will come in telling me their camera doesn't work or it's not functioning right, when in reality it's because they're trying to turn their camera to manual or to a control that they don't need or not familiar with. Now the mode dial as a whole is different no matter what brand you look at. In some cameras, it's even different throughout the brand. It's important that this is where you take the time to read the owner's manual, YouTube a couple videos on the camera itself, and really get a hold of and understand what the mode dial is. It'll help a lot to go through, understand, and pick apart all of the different controls and features that this has. Now, these are the most common ones that you'll see. The B on the bottom, I'll explain that, is becoming less and less more common, but there are a few camera brands that still have it. Auto, or A+, is auto control over settings and functions of the camera. M is for full manual control over the camera's array of functions. A, or AV, is aperture priority control. S, or TV, shutter priority control. P, which is program auto, or program. Aperture and shutter speeds are auto, but everything else on the camera is changeable. It's a really nice step after automatic. And B, for bulb, the camera is fully customizable, but as long as you're holding the shutter release, the camera will stay open. And for some cameras, one click and clicking it again will then close the shutter release. This is great for long exposure. Now next week, when we have our Beyond the Traditional Camera class, we'll talk a little bit more about those functions and features, and we'll really make sure that we drive that information home so that you guys know what exactly I'm talking about, so you can try to start understanding and getting a better grasp over the automatic control of your camera. Scenes are automatic modes. Simple as that. You're just telling your camera what exactly you're taking a picture of. It's important to remember that not necessarily all scenes are better than automatic, but they do exist for a reason. Take a look at your owner's manual, or feel free to chat and ask questions, or take a look online and see what they are so that way you get a better understanding. I personally still think that automatic is more than enough for your everyday user, and that using these doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get a better version of any of the other types of photos you're trying to take. On the side of your camera, we have a flash button. Clicking the flash button will engage the flash and make it pop up, so that way when you shoot, it's automatically turned on. The function button, the FN button, exists on your camera. You'll see that on almost every brand. There's two different meanings for that. Clicking the FN button can be your ability to access your shortcut menu. This can help you change things like the filter effect on your camera, the white balance, the autofocus, target recognition, the focus area or parameters, your color calibration. It can also be a customizable setting that by clicking on it, it'll take you to a shortcut menu to change things that are maybe more advanced on your camera. In that same boat though, there is also a Q or an I button that'll function very similar to that on other cameras. That's an important feature that's available to you. The function or the FN button is in that same realm. Now we move a little over to the lens. We have the zoom ring, which is pretty self-explanatory. Turning that one way or the other will help you zoom in and out of the picture you're taking. The focus ring, you turn that knob and that will then also help you focus the camera if you're not using automatic focus. The lens retract button, one click on that will engage the lens locked into place while you're traveling or moving about. Clicking it again and turning the lens will now move you into shooting mode, which will put you on a number. And in this case, we're shooting on a 16 to 55. When we're all done for the day and we need to take our camera apart, we have the lens release button. Clicking this and turning the camera lens counterclockwise will remove the lens. Clicking and then turning again the other direction will move the lens to a removed position or lock it back onto place. And then you also have the drive mode button. Drive mode will control things like your shutter speed. Sorry, not your shutter speed, your frames per second, your burst photography, or a timer photography. Do you want to take a 3 or a 10-second timer shot? Now again, these buttons are existing here on the camera. However, they can exist in other places. These are universal symbols, though, that are across the board on almost every camera you see on the market today. On the back of our camera, we have the menu button. Pressing this will take you to the advanced menu of the camera. This can include everything from time and date, screen brightness, Wi-Fi connectivity, bracketing or metering modes, to all sorts of different customizable changes, even menu change shifts that you can make on the camera. It's your brains, it's your guts, it's your operation system of your camera. Diopter adjustment. If you wear glasses like myself, you can put your eye up to your viewfinder and turn your diopter in such a way that it will make sure that you can see through your lens or your viewfinder clearly. The info button, pressing this will give you information or help based on whatever it is you're looking for. It's a great tool to use if you're confused. Most cameras no longer carry this info button on there, but if you do have a camera that does, press that when you're pressing another button and it should tell you what that does. Focus or exposure lock. This is the same idea as holding down and clicking on your trigger release on the front of your camera. Clicking this will start to focus for you, and then you can use your other finger to then hit the trigger when you're ready. Image playback button, the triangle and a square. Pretty self-explanatory. Press that, it'll show you photos or videos you've just taken. The I button is another shortcut menu system similar to FN, and not listed on here, but also similar to the Q button. We then have the OK button, that's your enter. The multi-selector, that's your D-pad, so you can scroll across and check out every other nook and cranny of the camera via the menu system. We also have a magnify and demagnify button, symbolized by a plus and minus inside of a magnifying glass. Also pretty self-explanatory there. It helps you zoom in and out of your photos. And then the delete button, if you take a photo and you don't like it, you can press that, it'll delete the photo for you. Now again, that is not necessarily the most recommended thing. I personally would recommend to all my customers and people when they come in, delete all your photos at once on your computer, go through everything, make sure it all looks appropriate in the way that you want it to, view it on a bigger screen. These cameras have about a 3-inch LCD on the outside, so they're not necessarily the largest. This was a photo that a customer sent me a long time ago claiming that their camera did not work. Now, while that might be true to certain degrees, it really wasn't in this case, because in the case of this, our camera is working fine. It's the user on the end of this that doesn't. You've got to make sure that when taking a photo, you're properly focusing and using the right settings. When I had the customer send this to me, I told her to bring the camera in as is. I would take a look, and we learned that she was standing on the manual section and didn't know how to set or control those numbers and those features. We then played around, got her to where she needed to be, and we started shooting good photos right off the bat when we got her in the automatic so she could practice and learn from there. Start with automatic. Your camera is not your smartphone. It's not a smartphone. It's not a phone in general. Your camera is very intelligent. It has so many new programs and features built into it that really help push the boundaries of what a camera is and can be. However, it's important to remember and realize that a camera is still a tool, as opposed to your phone that's built to be intuitive and to really understand the user and their needs. Cameras on the smartphones really helped push out cameras because of how easy and flexible they were, how good they were getting, and how far behind the real fancier camera technology was. Nowadays, though, cameras are so much more powerful than phones. They're fantastic, but they require some love and patience. The phone is intuitive. It's made to be easy to operate so that you don't have to think, you click and shoot. Whereas a camera is a tool, and if used properly, it can really open your door up to taking better photos, quicker photos, and more precise and beautiful pictures, as opposed to what your phone can do. This one always seems silly to me, but I still like to talk about it. Make sure you're holding your camera with proper grip. It's very much like the days of when you would talk about making sure you lift with your knees, because that's the proper way to ensure you don't get injured. Photography, fine art, painting, drawing, sculpting can all lead to carpal tunnel or arthritis. Photography is no different in that realm because of the fact that you're holding your hands in small, tight positions, making small incremental moves, and you're clicking buttons and moving things very small and like kind of short to your body. Overall, it's not the best for your fingers in the long run of things, so we want to make sure we take care of ourselves with good posture, good hand placement as well too. Focus, then shoot, and shoot through the picture. The goal of our photo is not to take it as quickly as possible, it's to treat it as an art form. We want to make sure that we've scanned the area, we've focused in, and we're taking a clean and good photo. It makes no sense to half do a photo or to not shoot in a good, proper manner. You really want to make sure you're taking the time to work on it, to refine your craft, but focus in on the whole entirety of the photo, not just one aspect. After you focus in and you see what's there is focused, pull the trigger and take the whole photo. Shoot through it in its entirety. There are a lot of artists that have made millions of dollars off taking blurry photos, and I like to always joke and tell my customers, we are not that artist. We are just trying to learn the basics. If you or your camera are moving, you're going to get a blurry image. There's no which way around that, and there's no one way about that. Make sure that you are taking the time to focus in and see exactly what it is you're trying to get an image of. Now is where I think the most important part of our talk comes into. Date your body and marry the glass. Overall, the camera glass or the camera body will become outdated. It will become used and it'll take some time, but it will start to go through change that will then cause it to start to malfunction, leak light, not shoot as fast as it was, not keep up with the industry standards that we're seeing in modern day photography. That being said, if we invest in our glass, what's taking our images, the finer aspects of our photos, we're going to overall get a better quality of camera use and shooting. Lenses are the most important aspect to taking photos. Without glasses and lenses, we don't get to have photos. Now that being said, when it comes to shooting photography, there's no one lens for one job. Lenses come in all different shapes and sizes, and they all have what we call focal length, or millimeters on there. In this case, we can see the difference as we go from 70 to 400, and how we bring not only the birds up close, but we bring the background, the mountains, and everything else into our frame, taking away a lot of the water, blue sky, and other excess materials or pieces that are around us in that image. Focal length and zoom are the same thing. In that regard, though, focal length can also compromise our image and give us compression. That compression can be seen when you look at the 16 millimeter or the 50 millimeter, or sorry, not the 50, but the 16 to 30. Any of those numbers that are smaller when we're taking portraits are not necessarily meant for that. They're meant for landscape, for architecture, for taking things that are meant to be wide. We want to get everything in the frame. With portraits, we want to make sure we give our model or our person or whoever it is that we're taking pictures of the best benefit of the doubt. So the wide angle brings that nose forward on this gentleman, makes the glasses and the face look super narrow, and at the 200, it widens and fatten out the face a little bit too much to make it look like he's over bloated or overdone. But at the 50, the 35, the 85, we have a perfect picture there that looks very crisp and clean. As we also play with focal length, we bring that background forward, not as much as it being in the foreground with us, and our person is not. So keep that in mind when shooting as well too. Now, common lenses that you're going to see out and about, why they should matter, and what you should be thinking about. The kit lens, I always highly recommend a kit lens when buying a camera. Kit lenses are great because they're the first foundation to our camera experience. A kit lens is a great way to get into photography without necessarily breaking the bank and spending a lot of money. It gives you, the shooter, the ability to figure out what exactly you want to take photos of. Are you a nature photographer? Are you taking pictures of your friends and your family? Are you a vacation photographer or a professional photographer? What is it that you're trying to accomplish when shooting? Nifty 50 or prime lens is one of the next ones. The Nifty 50 prime is going to be a single number lens. A prime number, a prime lens is really the way that you can look at this. The Nifty 50 got its name because the 50 millimeter is an exact replica of the human eye and perspective, and it's pretty nifty. Now, this being said, usually this will have a better low light performance. better image quality, crisper and less distortion as you go glass to glass. And it obviously depends on the lens that you're picking and what you're choosing. So it's definitely recommended to talk to your photo experts or wherever you're buying the lens from to really confirm why exactly they're doing what they're doing. Or to confirm why it is you're looking at what you're looking at and why it costs what it does, to figure out if it makes sense for you. On the flip side of prime though, we have zooms or telephotos. Where prime is a single number, zooms are a number to a number. Where that matters the most. When we're zooming with a lens, we are changing the number or the focal length and moving it from one to the other. We're zooming in and out of an image. Typically these lenses are bigger, but they then give us multitudes of different numbers. We can get stuff from super telephoto zooms to wide angle to portrait zooms. There are many different options available on the market. And in that same boat, there's different qualities available in that market too. We're not just looking at lenses that offer us small little zoom or big zoom, if you will. We're looking at lenses that can also bring in or let in more light depending on the quality of the glass that's being used. Similarly to the prime lenses, we're looking for lenses that have the better or less amount of distortion depending on our budget. So similarly to what I was just saying with our prime lenses, when it comes to zoom and telephoto, talk to your shooting or your, shooting coach, that's basketball. Talk to your camera store or your sales expert about what the differences are and really pick their brain on why it might be more important to you. If you don't notice the difference on there, then that is up to you to decide. And if it's in your budget but you don't understand why you want to get this over this, those are great questions to bring up and ask to make sure that you can get the best answer possible for you. Now, prime versus zoom lenses, I talked a little bit about the features, but what's the pros and cons of both? A prime lens is a single number, a zoom lens is multitudes of numbers. It's more versatile to have a zoom than necessarily to have prime. Primes, though, can let more light in. They typically take the better portrait or the better, kind of everyday image, whereas zooms still are fantastic, but they're great for distant shooting. Now, prime lenses are smaller. They're more compact. They can be more portable. However, the zoom lenses, while bigger and bulkier, still offer the user a really good image and a good shooting experience. On the flip side of that, though, if you want to zoom in on a prime, you can't. You got to walk yourself forward. On a zoom lens, though, you don't. You can really reposition your lens to make sure you get the optimized or optimal image. The last lens I'll talk about is the travel lens. The travel lens is typically a lens that's not necessarily built to very high quality, but it is built to give you, the user, the flexibility of hitting really any number. Why I like these lenses is because we'll get customers or people who come into the store who are going on a trip or a vacation or, my favorite, a safari. They want the ability to make sure they can zoom in and see the lions eating the zebra or to see the elephants marching in the distance since they can't get that close. These are the type of lenses that would allow for you to do that. So you can get those exact types of images and you can get better quality images without necessarily needing to buy a second, third camera or to go through all these other crazy hoops to get that. What lenses do you need? And I put quotation marks around need because in reality of anything, photography, unless you are a professional and doing this for your business, is a want and not a need. However, where that's excellent and cool is that we can want whatever we like, but I think that as a photographer, as someone getting into the hobby, you should have goals for yourself on what you want to pick up. And this is what I personally think that you need as a photographer. We call this the Trinity. You start with a prime lens. Typically a 50 millimeter prime is what you want because it's the exact replica of a human eye and how it views and sees and shoots. The 24 to 70 though is one of the most versatile lenses on the market because it gives you the ability to have landscape to more of a portrait. It's a perfect street walking lens, a lens to take out with you when you're going places. You can also opt for a 35 millimeter prime, which is also considered one of the most optimal street photography lenses, and is typically smaller and more compact. Lastly, then you have your 70 to 200. This is your big bad lens. This is for zoom, for distance. You've got the eagle flying in the distance and you want a patriotic shot of that bird. You might use something like the 70 to 200 in order to capture and frame that in the image itself. These three lenses combined really take away the need to get anything in the in-between. Now, you as the photographer and as someone who's using these tools have to decide whether or not your practice, your hobby, your business would benefit from other styles or types of lenses. And that is the beauty of the photography world, is they make lots of different lenses for all sorts of different use cases. And there's not one lens that would be better for one thing over the other. Each lens is uniquely good for whatever it is you're trying to accomplish or do. Last couple things I'll say before we wrap this class up. Try using the timer and camera app that comes available to the camera you purchase. Take a look inside the box. They usually will give you some sort of QR code to scan on your phone, which will then help you download the app. There's a lot of good resources and use tools out there for this type of thing that'll help you, the photographer, get more experience or more benefit out of that. Content creation is becoming more and more of a big deal, especially nowadays when people are trying to become their own content creators for their business, for their hobby, for their spouse's hobbies or business, or even for their kids. Things you should be thinking about are video quality, proper lenses and proper camera bodies and settings, stabilization, tripods or gimbals, lighting equipment like on-camera lighting, studio lighting, and just overall natural sunlight or lighting, and microphones, mic quality, shotgun mics, on-camera mics, wireless mics. Remember that all cameras nowadays shoot video, and all cameras have built-in microphones for that exact reason. So it's very, very practical and common that you can shoot good video and get some sound on there. Now, is the audio quality going to be good? Is the stabilization of your video going to be good? Is your lighting or actual just quality of video going to be good? That varies, and that's all dependent on you and the work and research you do to make sure that you can get exactly what you want out of that. There's no one right answer to it, and that's an important thing to remember. Easy ways to get into this without breaking the bank or overspending on your budget, especially when you bought a camera and a lens, is to look at some of these kits that exist. There's all sorts of different content creator or vlogger kits that allow you, the user, to just get into the hobby without necessarily having to buy everything from scratch and do all this extra research. This is an easy and quick way to just get yourself started before you then learn more and upgrade and push yourself forward to become even better and better. Here are my recommended accessories. And if I'm being honest, the top 5 are really the ones that I recommend the most. I think that if you are a photographer and you're getting into this, those are the ones that you should be focusing on the most. Let's start with a camera bag. Protect all of the investment that you've just made on this product. Make sure it's nice and protected so that when you're traveling and going about places, you don't risk damaging it. An extra battery and an extra memory card I think are very simple and easy to purchase items. That would be a great recommendation for any beginner camera art person or any beginning photographer or just photographers in general to always have. Lens cleaning kits, straps, tripods, lens cleaning kits and a strap are also very important. Get a kit. Do not use your t-shirt or sweater or, handkerchief to clean the lens. Take care of it. The scratches on there can overall damage your product as time goes on and forward. Getting a lens cleaning kit, you can use the same thing you use on your glasses. Whatever is easiest and best for you, that's totally fine. But a microfiber, a little like cloth is the best. And a camera strap, keep that thing around your neck so you're not dropping it or leaving it in places that you might not remember to grab from. A tripod is great for stability. An external hard drive is great to save your photos to if you don't want to use cloud or if you don't have enough room on your computer. Filters are fantastic. The other lenses that we talked about have been great. And classes and workshops. As a photographer, as an artist as a whole, you should forever be a student, constantly trying to better yourself and learn so that way when it comes down to it, you get the best results out of whatever it is you're trying to do. And the last thing I'll leave you with, the bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of a low price is forgotten. As a photographer, as someone who has been shooting for a very long time, for probably over about almost the last 20 years, it's important to keep in mind that with photography as a whole, you can always find good deals. But when a deal is too good to be true, or you're only looking at the price tag of an item, remember that over time and over the course of your longevity of that product, that bitterness of the fact of what you bought and what it's delivering to you as a result will always be there, and that price, that beautiful deal you got, will disappear. And you'll forget about it. Guys, that is it for my intro to cameras. I kept it at about an hour for everybody. Typically now is the last 30 minutes I do for questions or answers. But unfortunately, I don't have anybody in class with me today. So if anybody online watching has any camera questions, I'll stick around until about 6:30. If more questions come up, I'll obviously stay after. However, though, next Thursday, April 10th, will be the second Thursday of the month, which is when we'll be doing the intermediate camera class. Again, thank you everybody for being patient with me this week. I will be out of town. So we're doing our intro to cameras today instead of the upcoming Thursday. So there will be no camera class this Thursday. And next Thursday, April 10th, will be our intermediate class. Thanks everybody for joining me. I'll give it a little bit longer before I sign off. All right. Well, it looks like nobody has any real questions for me today. So, sorry, my allergies, the weather has been less than fruitful for me. Thanks everybody for joining me. As always, I'm Saxon. I'm your camera host. We do this every Thursday, typically from 5:30 to 7. This Thursday I'm out of town, so we did it on Monday instead. But join us next Thursday, April 10th, where we will be then doing the intermediate camera class from 5:30 to 7. Have a great night, everybody. Take care, and as always, keep shooting. Have a